All right, welcome to the Underdog Ecom podcast, where two ecom brand founders are figuring out in real time.
Yeah, we're not here to preach. We're here in the thick of it, making mistakes, testing all sorts of ideas, and really sharing the journey of how we've been growing these brands from day zero. Hopefully you learn a little bit, perhaps come away with some ideas that save you time and money. And so if you're tired of the same glittery D2C advice from those 9-figure gurus, you're here in the right place.
Let's get into it.
We're here. That countdown was very fast in Riverside. Shout out Riverside. Underdog Ecom podcast. So we just wrapped up quarter two, sort of, just did it. And I have been doing this thing recently where I want to give transparency and updates to my team that work with me and kind of share high level details. It was actually requested by one of my team members, like, hey, how are we doing? And I've always found that to be something that's great to share, something that I was interested in when I was working under other companies and stuff. And so basically what I did was compile a list of maybe 8 KPIs. It was like revenue, net profit, ROAS, actually it was MER, OPEX, AOV, and maybe one or two other ones, and put these into a quarter by quarter breakdown. One of our team members don't necessarily know the ecom lingo kind of thing, so it's broken on and explained them, and then ran through those details with the team. And I was curious, Jack, if you do you do that with your team on a high level on a quarterly basis, and what KPIs do you share if you do? I also shared net profit, which I was like, we are not profitable at this point, at this quarter or last quarter, and I was a little scared to do that, to be honest, and I wasn't sure how that would go over because it feels very vulnerable to share that type of number. It's it's not necessarily working right now, but hopefully it will soon. Very curious for your thoughts.
What? I want to ask you your questions. What was the reaction? Was it, first of all, I suppose before that, was it shared because in my head, I'm thinking almost like a quarter recap call, but I imagine you probably shared it, a link to it or the documents to it, or did you have a call with them, or did you do it in person? And so did you see
in person?
Oh wow! So what was the reaction?
I remember in the past when I worked at small startups, we would go into meetings and there would be 20 pages of a slide deck for KPIs, and it was just so annoying, and no, I was not interested at that point. This was in person. We were sitting on a table. I was sharing. It was on my phone. It was just a Claude dashboard, basically, that it whipped up using some MCP and APIs. And I don't think the reaction was anything that I didn't expect. I think that they know that the business hasn't been doing that well. It's been kind of a struggle. I know that myself as a founder CEO, have felt all over the place and have conveyed probably more than I should my stress and anxiety around how things have been working, because this last quarter was tough for a bunch of reasons. It feels like it's been a roller coaster up and down. I think we've both felt that way with cash flow and how Meta's not been cooperating, at least on my side. So I think it was kind of expected. Probably, I don't know. It wasn't a huge reaction per se.
Okay, so yeah, and who was it exactly that was there? Was it so because I don't exactly remember your team. So I know you've got someone who's covering a lot of the shipping logistics side of things. Was anyone else?
No, it was just me and her.
Okay,
my team is one person.
Yeah. No, that's fine. It's just I mean, because the reason I say it is because I mean, I've never been in this situation, but telling a group of people something, it must be very different experience to having to tell someone one-to-one, which has also got its challenges. So, but yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think it's the right thing to do for sure. I think the more people know, the better generally, in my opinion. I can't profess to saying I've done that. I have a small team as well. I've got 3 people that work for me, but I also have them working on the agency side of things. So I think I would need to be clear about where the revenue is coming from, which is part of the reason why I haven't done it, because it would get a little bit confusing. But I think they're very aware of the boundaries between can share and the agency, but and the money that comes in and things. They do see all the sales that come in, they see the revenue that comes in, but I don't share net profit numbers with them. Um, and so yeah, I think there's definitely benefits of it, because I think especially when people enjoy working somewhere, they, they, for their own security, they want it to work out. So they might, I mean, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but they might work that a little bit harder knowing that they want it to work out, right? And so if they're misleaded about, they see the sales coming in, they think, oh, it's fine, this business is doing 50, 100, 150 rand a month, and I'm making $3,000, $4,000 a month. It should be fine, right? Um, that sounds good, but then you don't realize how many they don't necessarily, especially if they're not doing all these things, like how many expenses go into it. So I think it's definitely the right thing to do. I want to do that, and I think what you've got the benefit of is you sit down with them in person. There's a bit of trust there. I would need to figure out with my team members where we're not in person at all, and how we do that. And one thing I've been thinking about is trying to set up like a meetup in somewhere, because they all work in Europe somewhere. So maybe like some next time I'm in Barcelona visiting my girlfriend's parents, to go and meet all of us there together and do a few days work, and then I can share numbers with them in person. I definitely want to do all of that. So yeah, I think it's got its pros. I think you have to be careful. Like, I mean, you have to be careful with them thinking that the business is going under, when actually you as a founder know that this is just the rocky road of a business, and not necessarily everyone understands that. But I do think overall probably it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, there's definitely tricky. There's like a fine line there to walk. And I think kind of what you talked about was like part of my rationale for doing it is I have been doing quarterly, basically like one-on-ones with my team for the last, I don't know, close to a year probably now. And so like having that built in, it's questions about like their job, what we can do better, like have, I think we've built up a strong relationship when it comes to a working dynamic. And I also ask them like job satisfaction kind of stuff. Like I want to be in tune as much as possible with how they're feeling, and make sure that I'm equipping them for success as much as possible. That's part of my job basically. And I think sharing the profitability numbers is helpful, because like they see, one thing I'm trying to work on is like I obviously see the high level stuff. I see all of the reports and everything like that. They see the low level stuff. They are shipping all the orders, and so they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we've done a bunch of this. Like these are really popular right now." And it's kind of like they are, but like you're just you kind of have a small sample size. Like you're not seeing the total numbers from a high level. And so I think when they're seeing like really busy order volumes or number wise, it's like it's important to plug them into the whole picture to see like, oh no, we spent, whatever, 50K on Facebook ads. So like there's a huge chunk there that's fueling that order volume. Because I think someone that comes into this without an e-commerce background or business background, they don't know like, oh, there's a cost to marketing. You know, there's been many times in the past where the team has been like, hey, I noticed, or like, these aren't very popular right now. It's like, well, actually, they're not popular because I cut all the ads for that particular product, because the ads weren't profitable. Like we weren't hitting the numbers that we need to. And so basically like tying those ideas together where it's like, oh no, this is high level, this is how things are going, and these are the like the fuel to the fire. That was part of my rationale for sharing it. That was another metric in my KPI list, was Facebook ad spend, marketing ad spend, but it's all Facebook at this point. Oh, yeah.
Did you get a question about why you spend so much money on Facebook ads? Because that's probably the question I'm expecting the most.
Uh, uh, no, but I've mentioned it before. Like that's how we primarily drive ads, or like, I mean, revenue. And there's been periods where I've cut off ads completely and volumes have dropped off a cliff. So I'm hoping to make the conclusion there that like, oh yeah, this is, but I think the first couple times I've mentioned that, where it's kind of like, yeah, this is like 70% of our revenue or whatever it is driven primarily by ad spend. It's kind of crazy. It is crazy to think about, like that's the fuel.
Yeah, when I speak to anyone outside of e-commerce, basically, like they can't believe like how much money like we give to Meta ads specifically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. But like I think it's one of those things. I think yeah, definitely making people more aware of it makes a lot of sense. And I think quarterly is good because then people can track, you know, and I think also lets people who are doing like, especially if it's in the marketing side of things, you know, see the impact of what they're doing, you know, on over the course of time. Whereas like that's another thing as well. If you're not seeing those numbers, how do you know really as an employee what you're doing is working, other than being told, oh, you did well, you know, but not actually seeing how it's impacting things specifically makes it very hard for you to get better at what you do. So I think it's really important. I think it's really important. And I think that I think also just try it goes into the side of transparency in general. It's quite hard to be transparent as a business owner about your numbers, about your financials, you know, how much you pay yourself or where you spend your money, you know, and I can imagine as your team grows, like that transparency gets harder and harder and harder. But at the same time, it unlocks like a relationship level with people who are working the business where they don't feel like that things are being hidden from them, and they feel like what they're doing, they can see the effects of what they do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think especially, and my team has recognized, like, you know, many times that they're saying is like, oh yeah, it's a small business. Like, I understand like things will get rocky, things will be really hard here or there. There was a point a couple weeks ago where I told the team like, hey, we're probably gonna have to cut hours. Like, you've been
Yeah.
booking 40 hours a week. We might have to cut that down to 30 to try and make it through this hard cycle that we're in right now. And so yeah, having that like allegiance in some ways. I know that there's a lot of pushback against like treating a business like a family, and I don't believe that a business is like a family, but it's sort of like a little bit more of a mentality of a lot more allegiance than like you would when you work at like a big monster tech company or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm curious, related to all this, this is something I'm terrible at and I'm trying to get better about it, but do you ever review, I'm sure you do you review KPIs? Like, what metrics do you look at and how often?
I was literally about to ask you the exact same question. I was going to ask you, if you tie KPIs, if you give KPIs to a person, for example, and if you say like, you know, this is how we're measuring what you do, sort of thing. I find it really hard because it's, you know that saying like, um, when a metric becomes a goal, or what's the saying anyway? I can't remember exactly. It's like when a metric becomes the goal, it ceases to become a good metric, or something like that. Um, and the idea being that if you, it's like, you know, they're talking a lot about like how all these companies nowadays are like literally the way they're evaluating AI usage in their business is literally just number of tokens. So you've got people just wasting tokens like crazy because it's tied to how much money they make. And so they're wasting, it's actually become a situation where they waste company money to make more money. And it's just ridiculous, right? And so, especially in like, you know, Silicon Valley and all these places, it happens a lot. And so that's the perfect example of where like a KPI no longer is a good metric when it just is, becomes the goal. And so I struggle with that because, for example, conversion rate is a good example. Going back to ecom, you know, there are ways to manufacture a very high conversion rate. Don't spend money on ads.
Yeah,
Um, have a very high discount.
all warm
Own
traffic. Yeah.
all warm traffic, right? I mean, uh, but what is the point of that? And so like I find it very hard to find metrics that are continually gold standard. I think profit is probably the one that is gold standard, but very hard. It's not really a metric because it's the result of good operating, right? And that's hard to
Mhm.
treat it. I don't think it's right to treat profit as a metric because it does say that what you've been doing is probably right. That being said, even profit can be manufactured, right? If you just don't spend any money and let your business decline, you can make as much profit as possible for the next, you know, 6 months. But my point being, I think I find it really hard to find metrics specifically in ecom D2C where they stand the test of time. But I do think it's important to review them. So I think the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to, when I look at I think is to look at everything in together. So if I look at like, um, whether it's like total sales, I look total sales per channel, you know, what the profitability is on those, the conversion rate, average order value, all those type of things. Average order value, I look at a lot, and lifetime value. I think lifetime value is a metric I try and look at a lot because of, um, I think as for our business specifically, where people aren't coming back that much, if I can increase the possibility that anyone comes back more and spends more, I think it's probably beneficial to the business. There's probably not a situation where it's not that beneficial, unless it's, again, very, very, very heavy discounting. But so yeah, I think that's kind of my thoughts on it. It's not like a very straight answer, but I think that's, I haven't like found a gold standard metric, but I am interested to know whether like there's certain metrics you can give to team members and say, like, for example, TikTok Shop. I would like somebody on my team to start to really push TikTok Shop, but what metric do I even give them? Is it just sales? Is it how many influencers you contact? Is it how many products you give away? Because all those can be also manufactured to the detriment, right, of the business. So
Yeah. That's a good quote, like that you called out originally. It is tricky. And there's so many different facets to all of this, like so many different numbers, so many different things to look at. Um, I don't. So you were gonna ask me the same question. To answer that question, that's something that's on my to-do list for the next like month or two, is to like really sit down. I have been getting better about, like, for instance, reviewing Facebook ads and email stats every Monday. And so this is something where it's like every Monday or every couple days, I need to sit down and look at a lot of the like cost per acquisition, the ROAS, the MER, the profitability, the like net profit, like these numbers I'm not paying that close attention to. I feel like I'm just putting out fire. Like this last couple months, I feel like I'm just running around putting out fires. I'm sure you can understand. And it's like I haven't
yeah.
looked at the numbers. And so that's something on my near-term list, is to look at them a little bit more closely and try and do at least like monthly high-level recaps where I also look at like everything across the board, uh, and make sure that like things are rolling. Yeah.
What I was going to say as well is one sort of benefit of, I mean, I do a huge amount of, probably like you, analysis through AI these days, where it's either like analyzing specific, you know, a specific spreadsheet, or it's literally pulling together lots of data sources and trying to get a conclusion and sort of jousting back and forward and trying to figure out what to do, whether to send stock here or there, or whether to, how many products to make of this particular SKU, and whether to stop this SKU. Should I be putting more money into another product? All these different things. But I think one of the benefits nowadays of AI is that you can pull in multiple things. So AI might give you, like, say, if Claude or ChatGPT might give you a specific answer based on a data set, but you can then go in and say, yes, but what about the fact that, for example, conversion rate? Yes, conversion rate increased last month because I had a sale. And it'll say, okay, based on that, and you start to kind of pull these things together, and it can kind of help you kind of roundabout get to where you want to get to. But what the problem I have is, like, where does that go after? Not the data, but where does the analysis, summary, like, decision process? Because, if you, it's almost stuck in these chats where I think I need to figure out a way that when you do this analysis, that almost like goes onto like a sticky note somewhere, digitally, where you could say, like, that was a decision I made because of this, this, and this about this. I remember I made it on that last week, so that you have a starting place with all these things. Because I think it's hard otherwise, when you're constantly doing all these analysis, to go back and say, like, why did I make that decision? Why did I do that? Because there's so much data coming in and out. It's very hard to keep track of.
Yeah, the signal to noise ratio is high. Like there's a lot of noise. And you're right. Like I think some way, I'm sure there's a lot of, you could probably Google for this, and there's like 15 coded
Yeah.
steps that try and solve it, but like some sort of
Yeah.
like centralized brain to
Yeah.
store the decision points and that sort of thing. I do this. What's funny is I solve this particular situation in code. Like when I'm working on coding projects, there's a file that's like the centralized file that the AI pays attention to. And so when I come upon a decision of, it's like, this component needs to be done this way, or this particular use case needs to get solved this way, save it to that file and refer to
Yeah.
it in the future,
That's
in
right.
similar situations. But yeah, having something that's applicable to problem solving, running the business would makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think
moving.
I was gonna say, this kind of brings on this on to, like, we were talking about like meta and stuff. I think kind of brings on to the idea of channels. And we spoke about this off the pod, but like, I have a feeling that the way things are moving nowadays, that you need to almost be like a hybrid, like D2C business, in the sense that, like, selling on your website is, for most brands, no longer the the only way to grow your business. And I think it's, for a long time, I felt like it was, because I felt like it was better just to invest your energy in driving traffic to a singular source. But I think it's very, as you and I have discussed me on many episodes now, it's very hard to get like profitable growth through your website because of the kind of competition, because of the amount that how much easier it is to set up a website now than it was even 5 years ago, because of how much more expensive Facebook ads are, because of the competition, because of shipping, because of all these other things. It is hard. And I think marketplaces, for all of the, annoying things about marketplaces, they do bring traffic, which is really the hardest problem that you and I and basically every other brand are trying to solve for is qualified traffic. And so with things like TikTok Shop specifically, I think, I've mentioned this before, but I think we've started to do Amazon, and, we haven't seen, like, I wouldn't say we're profitable yet on Amazon, but we've probably, 5 times sales on Amazon since it's over the last 3 months. Hopefully that becomes profitable. But the point being is, like, that's a channel I just didn't have before. And TikTok Shop, I'm starting to see some sales trickle in, and I'm also like suddenly driving quite a lot of sales from the Shopify Shop app, which basically was non-existent before. And so I kind of feel like there's some convergence on these things, I'm sure. But I do think that, like, I feel less stressed having these other channels, even if they require effort to manage, just because I am not so dependent on one thing. And I think, yeah, I just think we're moving into a time now where maybe brands that are really good at managing multiple channels will start to see a lot of success.
I like the idea of being less stressed, less reliant on Meta. So it's interesting, like this whole terrible situation with Facebook jail for you has led to positive outcomes where it's like, okay, no, let's diversify the channels a little bit more. Like, I think you're right, especially with, using AI and automation and that sort of thing. Like, we can focus on a lot more areas these days, easier perhaps. And so that's really interesting. I think I've kind of been doing that, but not, I haven't been as intentional, I'm sure, as you have with it, because I'm still trying to unlock Facebook in some ways. And what's really interesting for that is like this is a key learning I keep coming back to that I keep forgetting about and then circling back to is uh, products that have really good product market fit, products that people really, really like, aka product market fit, do well. And I think a lot of times I'm trying to force, the square peg into the round hole of certain things, trying to run ads to certain products that people just like aren't that interested in. There's not enough um, experience with people buying from the brand that want to buy like some of the products that are more technical, that sort of thing. And so some of the products that I run out of and then I restock and they come back in and then they sell like hotcakes. I'm like, hey, this is great. Focus on what sells. I can't remember how I was tying that into channels, but channels, I am starting to look a little bit more at TikTok Shop. That's on my near term to-do list, is trying to figure out that. I was going to ask you some questions about that. And a few of the other, I'm cross posting content between TikTok and Instagram. And I've seen over the last year or so of doing that, like TikTok has continually grown in terms of audience and likes and comments and that sort of thing. So that's been pretty helpful. Cross posting to YouTube Shorts as well, because I feel like that's my favorite social platform, and I feel like there's a ton of potential there, but haven't seen much traction there compared to what I've seen on TikTok. Um, and still trying that organic, like the organic content, I feel like is the other big channel that I'm trying besides meta ads, and a few wins here and there. Like consistency is kind of winning in some ways, but it's still like very hit or miss, especially with how much Instagram's changed. It's hard.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that I think what put me off before expanding into different channels is that I always thought, well, are any of those going to get me the results that like Meta can on and direct on our site can, when I can control the whole experience, when I can have upsells, cross sells, I can have the post purchase emails, all these things, and I can control and I can build my email list. So why would I put take effort away from that and put in other channels? And I think that in some ways is a valid argument, but I think the problem is that with it's when those things don't go the way you want, like, for example, not just like from my example where I got banned, but but also where, the performance just tanks, or, you know, just things happen, right? Or things just aren't performing the way you want. And that's when it's really beneficial. And that's what I've learned the hard way. But I think also, the part of the difficulty is trying to do everything at once. I think when you look at all these shiny objects out there, you think, well, there's no way I can put money into, TikTok Shop, and put money into Amazon, and put money into, point of sale and all this stuff. And that's right. I mean, most brands, can't just go ahead and say, right, I'll put 50 grand into this, 30 grand into this, and let's just see how they do it, because it's just too much risk. And so I think you have to start with something and build it up. And I think it's, it may be TikTok Shop, it may be something else, but like I just try and look at it like this way. Like, if you were doing 50K, 100K a month on TikTok Shop, like how much less stress would you be for the rest of your business? Even if that's the limit, even if that's the absolute limit that TikTok Shop can do. And so it's almost like, well, having that on the backbone, like having that going, even if it takes, me hiring somebody else to help me with it, to keep it going, is still better than not having it at all. And then from there, you can then say, okay, where's the next thing, next, branch to grab onto? Is it, getting someone else to do more like in-person selling for me and paying them commission and stuff, or it may not be, or it might, is it, and that, again, that might be nowhere near what you can get from meta ads, but it didn't exist before, right? So it is really hard, because all these things require so much effort. And I think, but the same thing with content. It's like, if you speak to anyone who does good content, they're like, yeah, it was an absolute grind at the beginning, but I depend on it now, because like I figured out how it works. And it's like and this is something I haven't done, but they put the time and effort into figuring out what works for their audience. And, they spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time in the process, but it's put them in a position where they're not dependent on, say Facebook ads, and they're not dependent on, because they've got this organic traffic source coming, which other people would really cover. So I think all these channels, if they were so easy, people wouldn't, everyone would do them. And so that it's almost a reason to do it that they're not easy.
Yeah, you're right about like not being it like removes your over reliance on one particular thing. I think you're right. Like if you can hit the maximum on a bunch of little things that are working, whether it's TikTok Shop or in-person sales, and like push that to the maximum and then start to focus on other parts, like I think that makes a sense from a compounding standpoint. And then I think also all of this, I feel like all of this falls under what I call brand building, where it's like, I've felt the same way, or it's, oh, I can't control the experience as much if they're offsite. I can't, get them into the email funnels and all the cross sells and upsells. That same thing you mentioned, I've felt that same way. But I think at the end of the day, like a sale is a sale. If someone has your product in their hands, they're going to be more apt to come back, more than likely. And like you've already got them acquired via one channel, so they might come back, follow you on Instagram, and buy the next thing, something like that. And I think as we like build out the different channels, because I'm TikTok Shop, like I was saying, is on my near term list. I'm also looking at doing a lot more pop-up shops locally. I'm building an iOS app that for like an adjacent type thing for the business that's building the community, building the world of
Yeah.
mountain lovers, that sort of thing. And so all of these different areas kind of building up different sections where people can kind of gravitate towards and fall under those buckets. And then hopefully that will build up like the top line or whatever it is, like whatever the key metric is to look at, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about the iOS app in a minute, but just one more thing is, like, I met a guy the other day who has a skincare brand. And I said, and they're doing, more than me for sure. I don't know exactly how much, but they're doing quite a lot. They're in retailers and things. And I said to him, how many are in a team? He said, oh, it's just me. And I said, really? He said, yeah, but I got 6 agencies that I work with. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. And he said, I just recycle them like after 6 months if I feel like if I need something fresh. Not necessarily the take I would have on running a brand, but I liked that there is something about that is interesting. Not because I feel like that's definitely the way to do it, but in some ways the idea of like, he just wants to make sure that those things are covered, so that when he's got an agency for Amazon, so they want to make sure they're doing Amazon well. He's got an agency for TikTok Shop, wants to make sure they're doing TikTok Shop well. He's got an agency for Shopify. He wants to make sure they're doing Shopify well. He doesn't profess to be amazingly good at any of those things. But he wants to make sure he's there. The brand is there. So he just makes it happen. And he somehow made the unit economics work where he can pay 6 agencies a month and it all seems to work. So fair enough to him. But like, it comes down to the fact that, like, what is a brand these days if it's not manufacturing its own products? It's also, and then also it's, part of it is just managing those channels, managing, there's the marketing side of things, yes, but it's also, making sure that it's available to people and different, and making sure the logistics are sorted out, and that, that is a big part of a brand as well. It's the unsexy side of a brand, but it's a big part of a brand as well. And I think that kind of enlightened me to that, that you almost have to be good at that. But yeah.
Yeah, there's so many times where there's like hours and hours a week I spend just doing like ops work, or like bouncing back and forth between things, figuring out what cash flow cliff to try and walk back from, that sort of. It's like, I want to be designing new shirts or whatever it is, and instead it's like all of this whack-a-mole kind of things where it's like, okay, yeah, if you hire those specialists in the different areas to cover things when it comes to growth or whatever you're looking at, that makes a lot of sense. I think and once you at that revenue threshold where you can make the unit economics work, like, that does make sense. It's specialization, the age-old economic philosophy there.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So before we finish, I want to ask you about the iOS app, because I think this is a seriously cool thing that I haven't asked you enough about yet. But yeah, tell me more about it, because obviously other people won't know as much as I do. But like, what the idea behind it, how long it's taken, how it's going, and everything.
It's very cool. Thank you. I am very excited for it. Probably have spent too much time on it, but I think it's amazing, and I think it's like plays into the uniqueness of my brand. Like, my brand is all about a shared love for a specific mountain here in Washington, Mount Rainier, and expanding beyond that, of course, as I've talked about on the pod before. But specifically, like, and this is how I started. I started the brand tweeting if the mountain was out. It's this local catchphrase. It's a super cool thing. It looks absolutely unreal, like something out of a movie. And it doesn't happen that often because it's very cloudy here. And so a couple of years ago, my brother and I started building a website and a back end to have people crowdsource to answer that question, to like chime in from their location and report if it's out or not. And then it will build it to a map, and people can share pictures. We added photo uploads at one point. And so it's this like community focused, crowdsourced app that's all about sharing a love for mountains, specifically this mountain. And so a couple months ago, I started the iOS app for it. I want to build Android next, but I decided to go native with iOS, and use Swift rather than build something with like React Native or something that's Expo or cross-platform. And so I have a background in tech, as we know, and designing things and designing websites and building websites and stuff. And so this like has been so fun. It's my first iOS app, and it looks quite good, I think, especially for doing it all myself and having never done this before. And I've got a bunch of people in the beta. People are using it daily, and there's something just unreal about building something and having people use it and love it. And like, I'm getting compliments from people that are using it. I've tried to focus a lot on the marketing behind it. So I'm building like a beta waitlist where I'm sending out rounds of beta invites. It's in test flight. Learning so much about the iOS app process and deving for phones and that sort of thing. And hopefully we'll have it live soon on the App Store, after I polish off a few more updates. But it's been so fun to build out a bunch of, like, I'm building so much around, I want to build a ton of sticky features. Like, I want this to be someone's favorite app they have on their phone that they like always pull up. And so I added photo uploads so people can upload photos. I'm working on an award system so you can get rewards for certain things. It's like, you reported from a new county, here's a special badge. You're on a hot streak of 10 days in a row, because I've got streaks built in. You get a 10-day streak badge. You reported on a certain day, like let's say there's like a special day, like Mount Rainier's birthday or something. You reported on Mount Rainier's birthday, here's like a special badge for that. and you also get points. Like I've got these Tahoma tokens, I call them, which are points. And then I've built in like a sharing generator, image sharing generators to help improve the virality and the pollination of it out on social media. So people can generate an image that they can share social media with either their picture of the mountain now or just like the map with their generalized anonymized location on it. And so that will help to improve it just being shared around on social media, ideally. Um, Lots more featured like reward. Like I want to tie like my next big thing too is tying in the apparel brand to the app. So it's like, report today and get like a free shirt or something like that. Or to like, there's so much that can go between the two that it's like not really, it's not part of the ecom thing, but it's definitely part of the whole ecosystem of the community for the people that are obsessed with this mountain that's just like me. Um, so it's been super fun, and I think like Mike, I'm selfishly like trying to win an award for best design for next year. I know that's pretty much impossible, but like I want it to be like one of the best apps around that people are using. It's been super fun.
It's super cool. Like, I mean,
Thanks.
it's like looking really good. And I think it's a great play as well, not just because first of all, like something you're passionate about, right? And I think it's really cool to put something out in the world, but it's also just it's got this really cool kind of connection with the brand, which isn't salesy in any way, which is just perfect because it means it has this inbuilt community, virality, interest, help propelling the brand without it, forcing it. I think it's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's like leaderboards that I was going to build out. I could talk about it for hours, but I was going to say the last thing too. We talked about channel diversification. I'm building out a paid tier for it where you can get different special perks. Like you can get like a special card and that sort of thing. Obviously, will help fund development and design. And then also, I think the big winner will be some of the special features where it's like get push notifications when other people report the mountain out. That sort of because people really want that. And so that will hopefully diversify some of the revenue streams for the brand. As we talk about channel diversification, that's one that I'm sure no one else, well, there's probably some other people in the world that think about it, but like build a random iOS app that's adjacent to the brand that can also help hopefully provide some revenue coming in like a steady stream. So we'll see.
It's
We'll
really
see what
cool.
happens.
I mean, and who knows? There's all sorts of opportunities to reach that audience in terms of push notifications. Like, there's just some really cool stuff that you can do when the time comes and when it's right. But yeah, I think just to finish, I think the cool thing about this that I really like is first of all is just how well it's been done. But secondly, I think I really like the idea of like these sort of mini spin-offs and projects that you can do when you're starting a business. And I think a lot of people shun against that type of thing. You need to be, owned in what you're doing. And I understand that, but it's where these kind of strokes of genius come in that really can propel things forward is when some of these things work out. And they don't all work out, but it's like heard about Andrew Wilkinson, that billionaire who's done had like Meta Lab. I read his book the other day, and he had this. They just had these constant spin-offs. Slack was one of their spin-offs. They set up Pixel Union, which sort of sold tons of the Shopify themes. Like all these different were just like somebody in the business or him were just like, okay, go and do that. Go ahead and pursue that. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Um, and okay, yeah, there are distractions, but I think there's also that's kind of how you unlock new avenues, opportunities is delving down these paths. And so in some ways, I think it is important to be focused, and I think you have to understand when to be, but I think also these things open up new opportunities that you would have seen before.
Yeah, I think part of that is recognizing what you're personally good at and like where you excel, like your areas of expertise. I know that I'm way better at building and designing technology and software and apps than running an e-commerce brand, if I'm honest with myself. And so that's where it's like, okay, that is where some of my strengths lie. I'm not going to pivot 100%. I still love running my brand and making apparel and trying to make that work. But I think this falls in line with a lot of my skill set and makes sense, like you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
that's a good book. I read that book like a year or two ago.
Yeah. It is a good book. Yeah. Yeah, I actually, I don't read a lot of business books, but I really enjoyed that because I kind of liked the way it went through his life, kind of, and how he started and the way he was approaching things. And I really liked there's something about his, you know, I didn't really care about the money side of it, but the way he's kind of got really passionate about various different projects along the way is something I really feel akin with. Is I get kind of very passionate about these things, and there's just I love projects and things, and so I think there's something about entrepreneurs that kind of we have that in common. So I think it's quite interesting. But yeah,
I like what you said about the like sort of random things that fall under the brand but aren't necessarily like conventional or traditional. One brand that I've been studying a lot of and following for the last like year or two, especially as they've revived, is ACG by Nike. And they have had these like crazy cool, obviously they've got like a gazillion dollar marketing budget, but they like for example, for the before the World Cup started, they like basically sponsored this a football match over I think in like Italy in the snow or something like that. Set up like a fully decked out branded train, set up a pitch with everyone, like gave out kits to players and they played and stuff like that. And then I saw they sponsored like a race I saw recently where it was like branding everywhere. Even like there was, and then I saw they had like a hiking hut or something recently that they did where they branded like they had the logs for this hiking hut with the little ACG logo fired, burned into the logs basically. Like so many little things that add up to the whole picture. Yes, one of my goals would be to like do stuff like that where it's just like really fun, interesting, doesn't necessarily contribute to the bottom line, or you can't necessarily track it with a metric like contribution margin, but it's part of the whole world building experience.
yeah. I This is a masterclass in branding as well. They There's some really cool stuff here, like in their website. Like the buttons are like purposely tilted so that it feels like it's uneven, because like the idea is it's all conditions. And if you go on to visit one of their product shots, the first shot is actually the shoe looking dirty. Not like a really clean, but it's like a really dirty but like stylized dirty shot. Fantastic idea. There's some really cool stuff here. And that's a perfect example actually, because like even Nike has to do this stuff to survive because they're not actually doing it well, right? And this gives them opportunity to go ahead and try something and be not the Nike that everybody knows, and and express themselves a bit more differently and go into a different market and do something differently that could unlock a whole different channel for them. It could be that this explodes, or it could be that this indicates something in the business needs to change. And so yeah, I think this is fantastic. I really like this.
Yeah, and they've sent out so many like gift boxes and stuff to influencers that are just like over the top branded and amazing. And like
Yeah.
they sent out, they like made fake train tickets for like the train event that they did with the football pitch and stuff. Just like crazy cool stuff. Dreams right there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I really like that. Anyway, I guess we should pack up. So thanks for listening, guys. That was episode 42. And but yeah, thanks so much for listening. We're getting into the depths of summer now. I'm literally sweating. It's like 95 degrees here. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, thanks so much for listening. Leave us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform. If you want to get involved in the podcast, send us an email. What is it? underdogecom@gmail.com, I believe. So yeah, send us an
So
email.
it's in the
We don't
description.
Yeah, well, we're checking it every once in a while, so we promise we'll get back to you.
But no
Anyway,
spam. The
yeah,
spam
no
goes straight in
spam.
the spam.
Yeah, no spam. All right,
All
thanks,
right.
guys.
Catch you later.